and thanks for watching this Life Solved short, where we meet researchers from the latest series of our Life Solved podcast. I'm Robin Montague. There's amazing life-changing work happening at the University of Portsmouth every day, and this time I'm meeting Amy Wright from the School of Sport, Health and Exercise Science right here to find out how robotics could play a role in the physical rehabilitation of stroke survivors. This is quite niche, but I say this every single time I record one of these episodes. Your area is fairly niche.
Yeah.
What interested you in rehab and rehabilitation?
So previously, I was in elite sport. When I was at university, got involved in sort of the elite side of sport. I was sort of travelling around the UK, supporting GB archery, GB gymnastics. I did some consultancy work for British Athletics, and that was the area I was going to go into. So making people stronger, faster, jump higher, those sorts of things. I then finished university, decided to go travelling. I did have a job offer from British Athletics, but decided to go travelling, wanted to see the world, did that, came back. And it's one of those things where you take a year out, and for elite sport side of things, it's quite difficult to get back into because all your CV's outdated at that particular point. So I decided to go for any job in biomechanics, ended up becoming a technician, and was like, you know what, I'll do a PhD. So originally, elite sport, I was going to do something in that, but we had a professor at Winchester, James Faulkner, who was doing research within stroke. He was a physiologist, so looking more at the cardiovascular side of things, heart, blood pressure. And he said, you know, I do some work in stroke rehab. Why don't you do a PhD in that? So it wasn't really something that I thought I was ever going to get into. It kind of just came along. But actually now, 6-7 years down the line, I find it so rewarding working with individuals where actually we're making life-changing differences to them, their quality of life's improving, rather than getting someone to run 0.01 seconds faster. There's a place for it in biomechanics, and it was awesome. But rehab is definitely where my passion lies in terms of helping people and seeing what we can do in terms of research.
It's quite an interesting jump to go from, like you said, actually being the athlete to now monitoring performance and seeing how you can improve it, but not even performance necessarily. It's actually just day-to-day living.
Yeah, no, exactly. And there's so many crossovers there. Biomechanics in general, we're just interested in how the body moves. So whether we're looking at someone sprinting at the fastest speed they possibly can and having a look at how their legs move while they do that, instead we're looking at how an individual's legs move post-stroke, walking slowly. So in terms of the skills that you gain from working in sport, everything's translatable because all we're interested in is how someone moves. And it doesn't really matter who's in front of you, to be honest. It just means that you have a more rewarding experience by working with those individuals from a more clinical population.
Definitely. And biomechanics that you just chucked in there, that's a really cool term to, if you're at a dinner party, what do you work on? Well, I work in biomechanics. It's a really, really cool phrase. But for anyone who doesn't know, what does that actually mean when you break it down? Yeah,
so biomechanics, if we, break the word down, we've got biology, thinking about sort of the human body side of things, and then mechanics. So when we think about mechanics, we're thinking more about physics, maths, the mechanics of the body. So we're interested in human motion, and we look at that in a very mechanical way. So we're interested in the forces that act outside of the body, inside of the body, how the body interacts with different surfaces, so the force is going through those feet, but also what we can see, so joint angles in the knees, the hips, the ankles, all the way through the spine. So anything to do with human movement of the body is what we do in biomechanics.
And that's all parts of the body. There's not one particular area that you guys tend to focus on more than the others?
Generally, you'll find that a lot of biomechanists concentrate on lower body, so walking, running, especially in a clinical population, because if we're thinking about quality of life, if you're able to walk around your home or walk down to the park with your grandchildren, things like that, walking is up there as a top priority in terms of rehab. But again, we look at bigger sports like sprinting, running, it's mostly lower limb, but we do look at upper limb, full spinal biomechanics. We can also have a look at respiratory biomechanics, how sort of the torso and the ribs are moving based on different sort of clinical populations in cystic fibrosis maybe. How does that change during exercise? So we can literally look at anything in terms of the body itself and how it interacts with the world around itself.
And I suppose we take movement for granted quite a lot, especially when you're able-bodied. It's easy to forget how important it is to know about how everything works in your body and how it moves and how you can support it until an injury or something happens.
Yeah, exactly. And again, in terms of injury as well, rehabilitation isn't just about working with, stroke populations or individuals with spinal cord injuries. Even those who have, a twisted ankle or injure their knee, for example, all of those injuries, they affect the way that we move. And again, within biomechanics, we can see how that injury has affected that particular person and, again, how we can help get them back into playing sport again.
And when you were more into like the athletic side of things yourself, did you ever experience any injuries that you were kind of not 100% aware of how to make it better or what the process was in order to come out of it?
Yeah, in terms of my sort of work back then, we were more performance-based rather than injury itself. So I guess I wasn't necessarily exposed to the injury side of things. But in terms of performance, a lot of our job is to look at the data, analyse the data, present it in a way that the coach and the athlete can actually interpret it. And then it's up to the coach to put in the hard work with the athlete to be like, right, you're not jumping high enough because of this. So send you off to a strength and conditioning coach and we're going to work on, your squats more or your jump height by doing more intensive activities in the gym. So generally we pass on a lot of our information, but we've got to make sure people can interpret it because we're very data driven. We like our numbers and spreadsheets. But yeah, mainly up to coaches and the same in a clinical setting. We write our reports, we analyse the data and interpret it. But at the end of the day, the physio who then directly works with the patient needs to be able to interpret the data so that they can then actually implement what we're doing in terms of how long they use something for, what the device maybe isn't doing, and that they can then concentrate on in physio as well. So it's a really important part of our job is making sure people understand what we're actually doing.
And you mentioned a minute ago about stroke, the area of stroke patients and rehabilitation being one of the primary points of your research.
Yeah.
So just walk us through then some of the projects that you're working on at the moment.
Yeah, so the major project that we've been working on, it's been going on for about 4 or 5 years now, was working with a private physiotherapy practice, and we were looking at the use of a bionic leg, and that was the true name of the device as well, the bionic leg. But basically it's almost like an exoskeleton, like strap-on knee pretty much. So if you think of a really big knee brace in a way, and it has a motor that just sits on the top of your knee, so on your thigh. The way that it works is we then put a pressure mat or a little pressure insole into the shoe. And as we walk, we put our heel down first. And then as we walk through to then take that leg off, we then push our pressure onto our toes and then we push off our toes. So the leg worked by having an exoskeleton around the knee, pressure insole in the shoe, and the leg then understands exactly when it needs to straighten and when it needs to bend based on where that pressure is through the foot. So that was the specific device that we were using, and we gave this to a variety of stroke patients, and they took it home, which was the really novel part of our study. A lot of studies that look at robotics generally are based in hospitals, clinics, but ours, we wanted to try and bring it into the home. A lot of people can't travel to hospital, or, husbands and wives just don't have the time to engage in that sort of travel for their partner, and it shouldn't inhibit them with their rehab, right? So actually doing it at home allows them to get the intensive rehab that they really need. So we did it for a 10-week period, much longer than a lot of other trials. They're normally about 4 to 6 weeks, so much longer period of time. And then we looked at the biomechanics of those individuals before and after the study, and then looked 3 months and 1 year later as well to then see if those changes had remained. So that was the big main study that we've sort of been working on. It's just about finished now, writing up our final couple of papers. But it's been really positive in terms of what we found, but also in terms of the people that took part in the actual study. I mean, yeah, the confidence, the quality of life. And as a researcher, that's really all you can ask for, to be honest.
And it's not the first time. You mentioned one of the collaborators, Hobbs Rehabilitation. They've been working with robotics before, haven't they? This isn't the first time they've used it.
Yeah. So they're quite an incredible private physiotherapy practice. And they pretty much specialise in using robotics as part of their physio. So research in general shows that if you use robotic devices as well as physiotherapy, you get better outcome measures than just physiotherapy alone. So Hobbs Rehab work with a variety of different robotics companies. They trial different devices just like the one that we trialed with them. And the ones that work for them, they then use within their practices with their physio, with their stroke patients, with their spinal cord injury patients and other patients with different diseases. And it's quite amazing, some of the robotics you see now. It is like something out of a sci-fi movie, right? Exoskeleton suits that can stand someone up with a spinal cord injury, for example, and walk them across the room. It's really quite amazing. And again, exoskeleton legs that you can just strap onto someone and then they can just stand up and walk across the room. It sounds a bit sci-fi, but at the same time, like this is where we're going. And you never know, 40 years time, you might be seeing these rolled out somewhere.
That's amazing to think that something that would have seemed so sci-fi just a few decades ago is actually advancing to the point of where we can have robotic legs at home, potentially before you retire. Thank you so much, Amy, for sharing your research. It's been really interesting. If you'd like to find out more about the project, listen to the full episode of Life Solved on the University of Portsmouth website or your favourite podcast app now. You can also click the link in the comments box below or head to port.ac.uk/research. See you again next time.